Ladies and gentlemen, I am extremely excited to have this next guest on the show. Most fight fans know him from Captain America, The Purge, Fight World, which was absolutely amazing, Warrior, and basically the Netflix series Kingdom is just absolutely one of my personal favorites, and I know it's yours. So many amazing projects going on, accomplished, and coming up for this man. We're so happy to have him with us. I'd like to welcome Mr. Frank Grillo to the show. Welcome to the show, Frank.
Oh, thanks, brother. Boy, that was a great introduction. I wish my parents were alive to hear that.
I hear you. I hear you. We're the same. We're both orphans. Both of mine are gone as well. Right? I remember when an older friend of mine mentioned that to me like 20 years ago, and he said, "I'm an orphan now." And I said, "An orphan?" And then I thought about it. I said, "Yeah, that's what you and me are now." But hey, God bless them. They're watching over. You're doing great work and so much great stuff, man. I know that you've got some amazing projects coming up, but the one that's going to be coming up soonest, I believe, on March 5th via Hulu is called Boss Level. And from what I gather and from what I've heard from the few people that have seen the screener, is it's kind of a cross between Deadpool and Groundhog's Day. Let's say Deadpool meets Groundhog's Day. What do you think of that evaluation?
I mean, that's flattering. You know, if we could live up to that, that would be. If we could live up to half of that, it would be awesome. But yeah, that's kind of the sweet spot right there. You know, it's an homage to 80s R-rated kind of over-the-top action with a bunch of comedy in there. And yeah, Joe Carnahan, my partner who wrote and directed it, is kind of a master in this world, and I think he did a pretty good job.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. What was it like working with Mel Gibson and Naomi Watts?
Oh, you know, it's always a treat to work with established, well-respected actors. But when you get like a Mel Gibson, who's just an icon, you know, I was nervous at first because you never know. Like, I've worked with some big boys like that, but Mel was an absolute dream to work with. He was curious and giving, and he was kind of amazed at how Joe and I were making this big action movie in 27 days. So there was always this, you know, he always was like wide-eyed about it, and we found that to be funny because look, he made Braveheart, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But he was great. He's become a great friend. We're actually trying to mount another film with Mel and I and Joe directing too. We had such a great experience with him.
Absolutely.
And Naomi too. You know, Naomi comes with you know, a body of work that is, you know, incredibly well respected. So, you know, we were punching a little bit above our weight with all these people, and they're all great. You know, they all delivered.
Absolutely. I really liked how when Mel was in that first scene, he had his back to the camera, and so we didn't know who he was. And I think so many of us were thinking, I recognize that voice. Who is that, right? And then when he just turned around at the end of the conversation, that was awesome. Super dramatic moment. I love that.
Yeah, great. It was great.
Lots of great moments. Well, you've got other projects going as well, and I think it's stated that the beginning of this year that you had a half a dozen projects going. Anything notable you want to touch on here?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've had a couple movies drop in the past 2 weeks. Body Brokers was the other one. I had No Man's Land a few weeks before that. You know what? Because of COVID, you know, these film releases got bottlenecked, and it just made it seem like I was like the busiest guy in the world. And, you know, it was basically happenstance that everything just kind of batted up against each other. And, you know, we've got a bunch coming out. After Boss Level, I have a little bit of a quiet time, and then I have another movie with Naomi coming out, and then I have a Hitman's Bodyguard 2 coming out, another movie with Josh Hartnett, and so I think by June, pretty much everybody will be disgusted with me.
I love it. Absolutely. I think people are going to be extremely happy, and you're treating your fans to the rewards they need after such a difficult year in 2020, and I know we all appreciate it.
Oh man, and look, you know, that's what Boss Level. It's a great segue into why I think Boss Level, you know, is right for the time. It's a bunch of silliness. It's 90 minutes of like, let me sit down and forget about everything and laugh at some big dumb jokes and so have some fun. And that's what we all need. You're right. That's what we all need.
Absolutely true. One thing I know is that in every dramatic movie, I think there are always moments of comedy. I forget where I heard it, but someone told me that even the actors that play the best and most sinister evil villains always find some moments of humor in their performance, right? And so I think that is really important, and I like that feel that you had in the beginning of this guy says, I'm getting killed every day, whatever, however many times that is, and I like that lightheartedness. I think that's something that we need nowadays.
Yeah, it's a great point, actually, is that you should be able to find levity, even in the most dour situations, and that's if we do our jobs right. It's you find funny even in the highly dramatic movies. You should be able to find some moments of levity, so it's just not one straight miserable run right to the end. But look, I've read reviews of myself where people say, oh, it's interesting to see Frank Grillo be funny. He doesn't have much personality in his roles, and I read some of the things I read are real. I'm like, oh wow, okay, no personality. And so it's interesting. It's interesting that it's a lesson for me too to constantly seek out some of the levity that maybe I'm missing in some of my other movies.
Without a doubt, and you never know what critics are going to say. I remember, as I'm sure you probably do, that there was a prominent critic that absolutely panned Dustin Hoffman's performance in Rain Man. And and you think to yourself, what rock did this guy crawl out from under to decide that performance was crappy, but who knows?
It's true. A lot of my partner says it often. He says, I don't have a problem with critics. I have a problem with lazy critics.
Yeah.
Who just, they'll take a shot at me, for not being the Mel Gibson, or they'll take a shot at Mel for whatever he might have done in his past, and why should he get a break again? It's like it all gets very personal, and it has very little to do with the critique of the film. I try not to take the great ones too much to heart, and the same with the bad ones.
Without a doubt. I know you and I grew up watching Siskel and Ebert. Would have been fun if they were alive to review your film, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And, those guys get it. Those guys understood film history. They understood film structure. They were writers in their own. They were really smart writers in their own right. They were part of the judicious when it came to critiquing film. So again, from my partner's mouth, Joe Carnahan, he would say, look, I would get some really bad reviews from really great critics, and I appreciated it because it was written well.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So if they're true critics and they have a point of view and they write a really good critique, you can't help it like saying, okay, that's your perspective, and I appreciate it.
Yep.
It's like we so many of these guys who've got a computer and somehow they've gotten approved by Rotten Tomatoes, and you read it and you're like, shut up.
Yep. Their review is Rotten Tomatoes, pretty much. Absolutely, I'm with you. Well, let's get into some fight talk here. Let me start actually going back in time to Fight World. Love that, but we actually have had the host of two other shows from the 90s, that late 90s, I think it was, that were similar. We had the host of Vision Quest, I think it was, right? We had with Jimmy Smith. We had Jimmy on several times. And then we had Jason Chambers from Human Weapon. And was Fight World influenced at all by those two, or were you aware of those two shows at the time?
I was aware of Jimmy's show, and I was aware of both of them, more of Jimmy's show, but they had zero influence. Believe it or not, the major influence on Fight World was Anthony Bourdain.
Interesting. How so?
Yeah. I have been such a huge admirer and fan of Bourdain, of how he took basically, which was a pseudo travel / food show, and created this cultural phenomenon. And I thought, I was in China making a movie, and I got this light bulb moment. I went, I think I could pull off what Bourdain is doing, but instead of the food culture, I could embed myself in fight culture because I'm such a fan of fighters and why they fight. And Netflix, to their credit, they bought it in the room, and I was off to the races.
Absolutely. Great show. Interesting about Bourdain, I think in the last couple of years of his life, he decided to really embrace Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And if you remember, I don't know what belt level it was at, maybe purple or something, but he competed in a gi at 60 years old, and I think won the tournament. That was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah, he started getting into jiu-jitsu because his first wife was heavily into it, and she competed. And he got into it and then got hooked.
Yeah.
And funny enough, the episode that we shot in Brazil, we had to shelf because one of the main storylines, the dude we were following did some terrible things to his wife. And we just couldn't promote the show because he was such a big part of it and have somebody who was involved in that level of domestic abuse.
Yeah.
And we had to, my favorite episode, because, you know, I'm jiu-jitsu for 15 years, we had to put on the shelf, but we were going to return, if we were going to do another season, go back to Brazil, and I was going to approach Bourdain to see if he wanted to do like a joint show. And then unfortunately it passed away. So, I mean, I continue to watch his shows. I just think what he did in that world kind of changed, you know, what docuseries were.
Absolutely. And, you know, at first I used to watch with a girlfriend. She liked the Food Network. And at first I thought he was just kind of a cocky bastard. But as I started to watch, I saw, you know, he really did care about what he was doing. He loved food and the atmosphere of getting people together and sharing good conversation and just, you know, making it a really important time of the day. And so I definitely did get to like him. And then at 60 years old, to go out and get a six-pack of abs, it's amazing. I know that's go ahead.
He was shredded. He was shredded. And you'll notice at the time when he started to get into jiu-jitsu, the way he presented his shows was much different. He got involved in fight culture. He was always kind of searching it out. And the way his whole persona kind of changed because he became much more chill and like a fighter, much more respectful, much less cocky.
Right.
And I think jiu-jitsu had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I would think so too. And God bless him in heaven. Speaking about the shape he's in, man, for a Gen X guy, you're in better shape than 99% of people half your age. Can you give any secrets to guys over 40, what we can do when the metabolism starts slowing down a bit and all of a sudden you can't enjoy as much stuff and the workouts don't do as much like they used to? What can guys do to try to maybe, if not get into the shape you're in, but at least, you know, start to get into good shape instead of deciding that their days of having a good body are over?
Yeah, it's, by the way, that's a fallacy. That's a misnomer that once you get to 40, you know, life is over, and the physicality wise. And, you know, certainly your testosterone levels drop, but what you need to do to increase your testosterone levels is do strength training, is to, you know, lift some heavy weights, you know, your squats, your deadlifts, and your chest. You want to encourage your testosterone to jump back up again. You got to live a disciplined life, man. You know, I try to eat. I'm a paleo dude, so I try to, you know, maintain that 90% of the time. And I just recently tried to kind of drink a little bit less. You know, I'm a big wine drinker, and that's no secret. And I've tried to kind of decrease the frequency of which I drink. But it's about discipline. It's about, you know, living that lifestyle. And, you know, I wake up every day. I go to the gym. I box every single day for a couple of hours. I do my weights 3 or 4 times a week. And that's it. You know, if you want to look and feel a certain way, you have to, you know, you have to be disciplined. Absolutely.
Are you big into the high amounts of protein or not so much? Because that's something that's been in debate that a lot of people are wondering about. It used to be that they were saying 1 gram per pound, and the bigger guys were doing 2 grams per pound, and now they're saying that 0.5 gram per pound is okay. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't get into the science of it all. I mean, I know what works for me. I understand my body so well. I started wrestling when I was 7. I started cutting weight when I was 10. And so I learned what, over the years, what works for my body. And for me, I eat mostly protein and fat. My carbs come from vegetables, green leafy vegetables and sweet potatoes. I stay away from most other things, but I don't monitor. My theory, my mission statement when it comes to food is I basically try to eat one main meal a day, and I'll do a little bit of snacking on other things throughout the day. But it's really one meal a day. I try to limit how much I eat.
Makes sense. Well, we've got about 9 or 10 minutes left with you. Let's jump into MMA.
Okay.
So we were talking before, and the fans of my show know that that I was there starting to do a little bit of training, although I kind of broke it up for years after. I mainly had a friend who was training with the Gracies before the UFC, and I had a copy of the press kit, and I learned that you were one of those people, although I didn't know you. You were actually training with Hixon prior to the first UFC. Tell me about that, and tell me about what your thoughts were when they told you, and I'm sure you saw that same press kit saying that we got an event here. What was it like with Hixon back in those days, and what was your thoughts when the first UFC was about to happen?
Yeah, we were training up on Pico with Hixon's Academy. I mean, I had, through a wrestling buddy from Oklahoma, he said, "Man, you got to check this out. This, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's like wrestling, only you fight on your back." And that's how I started. And then, Hixon was doing Vale Tudos at the time. In fact, when he went to do the Vale Tudo, that is the choke documentary.
Yep.
I'm in the background when he's leaving. I'm in the background.
Oh wow!
Yeah, man. And so he got offered UFC 1, but because the Gracies were involved in creating the UFC.
Yes.
And but he didn't consider it to be. It was a little cheesy.
Yeah.
As far as he was concerned. So he went off to do the Vale Tudos, and they picked Royce Gracie because he was kind of, by definition, what jiu-jitsu was about. It was the smaller, weaker guy fighting the bigger guy.
Right.
And so Royce came through to our academy a couple times and trained with the black belts, Hixon's black belts. And I remember we would put aluminum foil on the windows so nobody could come and watch.
Wow.
And then, lo and behold, Royce went to fight in this thing called UFC, and he won.
Yeah.
He won the first 2, I think. He won 1 and 2.
And 1, 2, and 4. And
4.
And then number 3 was unusual because he won his fight against Chemo Leopoldo, who was completely jacked to the gills on steroids and probably outweighed Royce by nearly 100 pounds. And Chemo had learned a little bit of takedown defense and a little bit of jiu-jitsu and was able to defend himself long enough, and Royce ended up beating him, but he took a beating. I wouldn't be surprised if every muscle he had was sprained or strained and broken bones, and then they came out and then threw the towel in, and then that's when they brought in the police officer Steve Jenham, an alternate who had not had to fight any alternate match. He was there resting the whole time, and they brought him in. They brought him in against Harold Howard, the Canadian. And
I know. I knew Harold. Yep.
You did. He was a character, man. I still remember that great promo, that scar on his face, and he's got the sunglasses on, and he says, "We have a saying." He says, "Hi, I'm Harold Clarence Howard. We have a saying here in Canada: if you're coming on," and then he takes off his sunglasses and says, "Come on."
Right. I remember. Wow, man, I'm so old.
Yeah, I'm with you. Believe me, we're right there. But that was a trip, yeah. And then Steve Jenham winning that. And then remember, they would have the Ultimates, where they have like the best guys, or some of the best guys. They had Ultimate 95 and Ultimate 96. Those are some great ones. Those tournaments were amazing, man. I mean,
they were amazing, and they were true mixed martial arts tournaments. Now. What we have in MMA is a homogenized version of that, in the sense that everybody trains in all aspects of martial arts. And
right.
That's kind of not what MMA was. That's why the Vale Tudos were so cool. But now look, I remember when nobody knew how to defend against jiu-jitsu for a while. There were a couple of years jiu-jitsu swept. And I was watching UFC. I'm really good friends with Higan Machado.
Nice.
And he's always at my house. And we were watching his buddy who had won. He was from Brazil. I forget his name. He fought 2 weeks ago. He won at Abu Dhabi 7 times.
Wow.
He was a 7th Abu Dhabi champion. But he came to fight at the UFC, and he fought a dude who looked like he was like way out of shape, like a skinny guy.
Yep.
And he tapped the guy. The guy got hit a couple of times. My friend Higan's buddy took a couple of shots because all he knew was jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
He took a couple of shots. He got rocked. The guy tapped him out.
Oh,
he choked him out.
Oh, wow.
So there it goes to show you the evolution of, you know, I mean, jiu-jitsu's dangerous, but everybody knows jiu-jitsu.
That's it. I mean, that's really
everybody.
it. And the Gracies, you know, got to be remembered for that because, you know, it really is. Were it not for them, you know, who knows what we'd have. We wouldn't have the Vale Tudo, and we wouldn't have what we have now. Speaking about what we have now, I know you're busy filming, but are you aware of the big card we have coming this Saturday?
What do we have said? No, I'm not, because I'm actually been doing press for 2 weeks.
Gotcha.
So I've been underwater. What do we have?
So this is one of the biggest cards in a while. UFC 259, 3 title fights, and I wanted to get your quick opinion on them if I could. Let's now the bigger ones I know you know. Israel Adesanya, the last stylebender. He's going up in weight to face the champion who took John Jones's title after John Jones vacated the title. That's the man from Poland, 37-year-old Jan Blachowicz. And so, Israel Adesanya is coming up. He made a statement the other day that even though it's going to be a 205 limit, that he might just weigh 193 pounds. I'm doubting that that's the truth. If it is, then it really might be almost like an old school matchup. But what do you think? Do you think Izzy, just with his skill, can go up 20 pounds in weight and be the one of the few double champs that we've ever had and beat Jan Blachowicz?
He could. You're talking about he's a bit old.
Blachowicz is,
Blachowicz, and I love Israel. I mean, he's a badass. I think the whole 193 thing is nonsense. I think he walks around that guy at about 212.
I agree.
So I think he's a monster. He's a badass. He's a great fighter. He's both striking and on the ground. So I got to go with Israel. I love Israel, so I got to go that way.
He's amazing. How about the women? Amanda Nunes, the women's GOAT, as it were, and double champ. She's going up against the 6-footer from Australia, Megan Anderson. Big underdog in that fight. You think the Aussie has a chance because of her height and length?
I don't. I think Nunes is too skilled. She's just way too skilled. I think she's one of the best fighters, period, that's out there right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one I'm not sure if you're familiar with. Not as many people follow the smaller guys, but you have the Russian champ Piotr Yan against Aljamain Sterling from the East Coast. I know you're an East Coast guy. Yeah, you're familiar enough with them to pick that one? Yan has the title and Sterling's challenging.
Yeah, I think Jan wins. Sterling's he's a tough kid. Very tough kid, but I don't think he wins. I don't think he beats him.
Absolutely. 2 minutes left, I think we have with you. Growing up, were you watching all the combat sports that were on? I remember the first things that were on TV was full contact karate. I think they called that full contact. They called it full force karate or something like that. Yeah. And then it was PKA. Were you watching that? And then sometimes
I absolutely did. I absolutely watched PKA, and back when Betamax was out.
Yes. Yes.
The giant Beta films. I remember getting all kinds of bootlegs from Dutch kickboxing and Muay Thai fights. I actually used to get later on Bourdain, who was one of the greatest Muay Thai fighters out of Bangkok.
Right.
I used to get bootleg tapes of Bourdain's fights, and then later when I went to do Fight World, I went and got to train with him.
Oh, that's amazing. That must have been a treat.
He's at the end of his career now, but I remember getting fights of this guy when he was like 15 years old, and he was a killer then. He was like Canelo and Tyson, who at 15 were beating up men.
Absolutely, absolutely, just an amazing talent. Do you have any all-time favorites in the world of MMA?
You know, I love Hendo. I love Dan Henderson. I just always loved him. I loved when he was fighting. I loved Anderson Silva. I love Randy Couture, who I've become friends with.
Yep.
Since I loved the sheer toughness, and I got to experience his strength in Matt Hughes.
Yep.
And, you know, I love those guys, you know, and I got to be friends with them. I worked with Matt on Kingdom. I became friends with George St. Pierre, who I thought was maybe one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen.
Yes.
I went and trained at Jackson's when he was training for a fight, and also a young John Jones. I was there watching John Jones come up. And, you know, when you're around 25 world champions, and then there's one guy who makes those guys look okay.
Yep.
You know, like he makes the world champions look like, okay, they're pretty good fighters. And that was John Jones.
Right.
You know, phenoms.
Absolutely. They're amazing. Do you think GSP will come back for that final fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov or anyone else? That would be an amazing dream fight.
Well, I'll let you know a little secret, and he might beat me up if he hears this. But I just finished a movie with Jerry Butler, and we had our last week was in New Mexico, so I went down to Jackson's. Mm-hmm. Actually, Coach came and spent the night on the set, but before that, I went to Jackson's, and we were talking about George, and he was giving me a wink that there's a good possibility, and he's not happy about it, Greg. He doesn't like when these guys come back at this point. But he was like, I think it might. It's gurgling. It might happen.
That would be amazing. I appreciate that little hint of optimism about that, because that would be so tremendous, and I would love to see it. George is such a phenom, having grown up in Canada, not been a wrestler, and then essentially he beats the very best wrestlers out there. And
I think you know, from what I know, you know, George wasn't a wrestler. And this is the kind of athlete he was. And then I think that the Canadian national team asked him to wrestle for them, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right. He caught on so quickly, and he was already like 18, 19, 20, even older, I think, when he started to learn it. And it's just, you know, it's just a testament to what kind of an athlete he was. It's just, you know.
Go ahead. I'll tell you one more quick story. When I was down at Jackson Wink, he was training with an amazing Muay Thai coach, Phil Nurse, out of New York City.
Absolutely.
Phil is a phenomenal coach and a phenomenal Muay Thai fighter. And it was when he was teaching George, it was literally the last day George was training before the fight. He was teaching George that a lead Superman jab, right?
Right.
And he just kept training. So it was a combination of kicks into a lead jab Superman punch.
Wow.
George won the fight with that punch.
Wow. Yeah, that he learned it that day. Yeah,
that's how amazing of an athlete he is.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, in martial arts, we both know how rare that is. Sometimes it can take years to get something down, and he got it in a day. Well, that's amazing. Man, I really appreciate you sharing all your great insight, Frank. Want to let everyone know to look out for Boss Level coming up day after tomorrow on Hulu. Also, No Man's Land, Body Brokers, War Party. Are all of those still coming, or have any of those been canceled? I think they're all still coming.
Those movies are out right now. War Party's our production company.
Okay.
That
right.
made Boss Level. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so much great stuff, man. And I'm so happy to see Generation X still kicking ass as the best action stars out there in 2021. Man, keep it up. You're an inspiration. And I really want to thank you so much, Frank Grillo, for joining us here in the MMA Power Hour.
Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.